The receipt was folded into a perfect square and tucked inside the tiny zippered pocket of her yoga pants. The pocket she always said was too small for anything, except chapstick or secrets. Well, I guess she wasn't lying. I wasn't even snooping. I was doing laundry, something I've done every Sunday for 9 years. We split chores, even when we hated each other. That's how stubborn we are. Or were. The pants were inside out. I never checked pockets. But I felt something papery and pulled it out. A receipt, thermal printed, and still warm like it hadn't aged a day. It was from a place I'd never heard of. Silver Pine Café, 2 guests, 3:17 p.m., table 9. But that's not what made my stomach do that weird gymnastic thing it does when something's about to go very wrong. It was what was scribbled on the back in faint blue ink, the kind of pen she always used for crosswords. You never looked at me like that. That was all. 1 sentence. 8 words. And the way my brain exploded trying to figure out whether it was her writing or someone else's, or whether I was finally losing my grip after years of telling myself we were just in a rough patch. She hadn't mentioned any cafe. We hadn't had a table 9 moment. And I definitely hadn't looked at her like anything lately, mostly because she'd stopped looking at me first. Here's the thing. I didn't ask her. I didn't storm into the kitchen and demand names. I didn't even confront her when she walked past me 10 minutes later holding a mug that said, "Wifey," on it like some twisted punchline. No, I Googled the cafe. Then I made a reservation for 2. Same table. Same time. Next Sunday. Because if I was right, if she was meeting him there again, I wouldn't need to guess anymore. I'd just sit at the next table and watch the whole thing fall apart in real time. I got there early. Not to stake out the best spot. That was already decided. Table 8 was next to the window, facing inward, with a clean line of sight across the narrow aisle to table 9. I didn't book it. I just walked in like I belonged there and told the hostess my name was Connor. That was the reservation on the screen. Connor had apparently canceled 10 minutes earlier. Poor guy never knew how much that helped me. The cafe smelled like bergamot and warm bread. The lighting was soft, low, like a stage set for things people shouldn't be doing. My palms were sweating, and I hadn't even taken off my jacket yet. I ordered coffee I didn't want and pretended to scroll my phone while tracking the entrance with the kind of hyper-focus I hadn't felt since college finals. And then, at exactly 3:15, she walked in. Trina, my wife, wearing the same soft brown coat she always said made her look invisible in a good way. I thought for a second she might be meeting a friend, that this whole thing was just a hallucination built out of neglect and assumptions. But then he entered, less than 30 seconds behind her. No hug, no smile, no rush, just ease, familiarity. He didn't sit across from her. He slid in next to her. Same side of the booth. Their thighs touched like it was a habit. I couldn't breathe. I took out my phone and acted like I was reading an email. Instead, I recorded the moment my life stepped out of my control. They didn't speak much at first. She said something short and looked away while he adjusted his sleeve. Then she laughed, small, quick, and rested her hand lightly on his knee. His knee. The same hand she used to place on my back while I cooked. The same hand that used to trace circles on my wrist when she couldn't sleep. I wanted to vomit. But I stayed. Because I had to know. Then the waiter came over. Friendly, oblivious. He said something that made them both smile. Took their order. Left. That's when I saw it. He leaned in and whispered something in her ear. She didn't move for a second. Then she slowly, deliberately, turned and kissed him on the cheek. Like she'd done it before. Like this was not new. Like I had already been replaced a long time ago and just hadn't received the memo. She pulled something out of her coat pocket. A folded napkin. Passed it to him under the table. His fingers brushed hers as he took it. Whatever it wasn't money. It was something private. And at that moment I realized, this wasn't an affair in progress. This was a ritual. Something they'd done more than once. Something she was comfortable with. And I was just the guy doing her laundry, wondering why she didn't laugh at my jokes anymore. I waited until they left. That was the hardest part. Not storming out of that cafe like some tragic third act cliche, flipping chairs and throwing accusations like they'd even care. No, I waited. Let the scene play out. I sipped the coffee I never wanted, bitter and cold by then, and watched them through the glass as they walked out, side by side, but not too close. Not touching, like they'd rehearsed how to be invisible. I gave them a few minutes, enough time for the sidewalk to swallow them. Then I walked to their table, acting like I'd dropped something. The waitress was clearing dishes. I smiled politely and crouched low, like I was checking under the seat. And there it was, still half tucked between the sugar packet holder and the salt shaker. The napkin. I snatched it, walked straight to the restroom, and locked the door behind me. My hands shook as I unfolded it. It wasn't a note. Not exactly. It was coordinates. Just 2 lines. Written in Trina's handwriting, tight and clean. N44, 966667, W93, 266,667. No names. No explanations. Just numbers. Latitude and longitude. I didn't even need to look them up. I knew immediately. It was a spot in the woods near her childhood town. We'd gone hiking there once, years ago. There was an old fire tower, half collapsed, with rusted stairs and spray-painted hearts from bored teenagers who thought forever lived in Sharpie. Why there? What the hell were they planning? And why on a napkin? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to her while she scrolled through her phone, face lit blue, fingers moving slowly. She told me she was tired. Said she'd had a weird headache all day. Then she kissed my cheek and turned away from me, curled into the blanket like a stranger boarding a different train. I wanted to shake her, scream, ask her who he was, why she looked at him like that, why she was planning meetings in the woods with someone who wasn't her husband. But instead, I whispered, "I love you." She didn't answer. Maybe she was already asleep. Or maybe she'd stopped hearing me years ago. The next morning, she left early. Told me she was going to her sister's to help her with some renovation thing. I said, okay, and gave her space to lie to me. That was becoming a routine. But I already had a plan. And it started with a rental car and a long drive north. Because if she was going back to that spot, I was going to get there first. The drive was longer than I remembered. Almost 5 hours north on roads that got smaller and meaner the closer I got to the tree line. The radio stayed off. I couldn't take the noise. I kept replaying every detail of that napkin over and over in my head. The way she folded it, passed it like it was a secret note in high school, like it was something practiced, rehearsed. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, that maybe she was planning some nostalgic surprise or meeting an old friend. But Trina doesn't do nostalgia, and she sure as hell doesn't meet people in the woods. I arrived just after 4 p.m. The sun was dipping but still high enough to sting my eyes. The tower stood in the clearing like a broken tooth, its silhouette framed by tall pine. The same tower we'd once climbed together, years ago, when we still held hands without thinking about it. I remember she got scared halfway up and made me promise not to let go. I didn't. Not then. But now, I felt like I'd already lost my grip a long time ago. There was a silver SUV parked about 50 yards away, half hidden behind some brush. It wasn't hers. And it wasn't rented. The plates were out of state. Minnesota. I memorized the numbers without knowing why. Maybe I just wanted something to hold on to if this spiraled the way I thought it might. I stayed back at first, watching from the tree line. 15 minutes. 30. Nothing. The woods were quiet. Birds. Wind. No footsteps. No voices. I started to think maybe I'd gotten the time wrong. Or worse, that I was losing it. But then I heard it. A creak. The groan of rusted metal. The unmistakable sound of someone walking up the tower. I waited a beat, then moved. I didn't think. My body just went. Each step toward that tower felt like walking into a past I didn't recognize anymore. When I reached the base, I looked up and saw them. 2 shadows at the top platform. They weren't talking. They were just standing there, still, facing the trees, like they were waiting for something. I climbed quietly. The metal moaned under my weight. I stayed slow, deliberate. By the time I reached the 3rd landing, I could hear their voices. Muffled at first, but then clearer as I got closer. "He doesn't know anything," she said. Her voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. Not scared. Not guilty. Just calculated. "He's not stupid, Trina," the man said. "You said he was obsessive." Obsessive isn't the same as smart. He still thinks this is about an affair. I felt like my lungs stopped working. They knew. They knew I'd found the napkin. They were talking about me, like I was the idiot in some bad movie who doesn't realize he's in danger until it's already too late. I should have left. I should have backed down the stairs and driven home and filed for divorce like a normal, sane person. But instead, I kept climbing. Because something about the way she said this isn't about an affair broke open something inside me. A door I didn't even know existed. Because if it wasn't about cheating, then what the hell was it about? I didn't make it to the top. I was maybe 5 steps from the final platform when the rusted railing beneath my hand snapped loose, nearly sending me sideways off the stairs. I caught myself, barely, but the noise gave me away. Above me, silence, then quick movement. A man's voice snapped something sharp. Boots scraped metal. By the time I pulled myself steady and reached the final step, they were gone. The platform was empty. Not just empty, cleared. No bags, no coffee cups, no sign of two people having stood there minutes before. I looked out across the trees, scanning for movement, but there was nothing. Just wind in the pines and the low hum of silence pressing against my ears like pressure underwater. Then I noticed the hatch, a small, square opening in the far corner of the floorboards. It had been nailed shut the last time we were here. I remember Trina joking that it looked like something out of a horror movie. Now it was open and dark. I should have gone back down. But something kept me there, staring at that hole in the floor, drawn to it like it was whispering something I wasn't ready to hear. My hands moved on their own. I pulled out my phone, flicked on the flashlight, and crouched beside it. Inside, it wasn't just hollow space. It was a storage compartment. Someone had cleared the debris, laid down a small tarp. On it, there was a black duffel bag, half-zipped. I reached in. The first thing I pulled out was a stack of printed photos, bundled with a rubber band. Not new. Not old either. High-quality prints, the kind you get when you want something to last. I peeled the rubber band off and started flipping. Photos of me. At the gas station. Leaving the grocery store. Sitting in my car outside work. Some were taken from across the street, others from close up. Too close. One of them was from our own bedroom window. I was sleeping, turned toward the wall, unaware that someone had been standing outside in the dark with a camera. My hands went numb. I dropped the photos and grabbed the notebook underneath them, spiral-bound, with pages filled corner to corner in Trina's handwriting. But this wasn't a journal. It was more like a logbook. Dates, times, behaviors. Notes on where I went, who I called, what I ate, what time I showered. One line stuck out, underlined 3 times in red ink. He still hasn't remembered anything from 97. What the hell did that mean? I was born in 79. In 97, I was a freshman in college. That year meant nothing to me. Nothing significant. Unless it did. Unless something had happened I wasn't supposed to remember. A twig snapped below. I froze. Slowly back toward the edge of the platform, peered through the gaps in the planks. I saw movement. Someone slipping through the trees, fast. Not running. Positioning. Whoever it was, they knew I'd found it. I stuffed the notebook and half the photos into my jacket, zipped the rest back in the duffel, and climbed down fast. By the time I hit the ground, the SUV was gone. No sound. No dust trail. Just the cold. That's when I realized something else. Trina had never left for her sister's that morning. She had driven here, hours ahead of me. And if she wasn't at the tower when I arrived, then where had she gone? And more importantly, who was she meeting next? I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Not after what I saw in that bag. Not after reading my own life like it was someone else's surveillance file. I checked into a roadside motel 2 towns over, a place with flickering lights and a front desk that didn't ask questions. The wallpaper was peeling, the faucet leaked, and the bed creaked like it was trying to warn me of something. It was perfect. I spread the photos out on the table under the dim lamp. At first glance, they were just shots of me doing nothing, carrying groceries, unlocking my car, staring blankly through a coffee shop window. But when I looked closer, I noticed something disturbing. I wasn't alone in most of them. In the background, faint, out of focus, there was a tall man, always wearing a dark green jacket and a baseball cap. Sometimes behind me, sometimes across the street. Once, he was standing in line behind me at a convenience store. I never noticed him in real life. But there he was, everywhere. Then I opened the notebook again. Page after page of behavioral notes. I didn't realize how easy I was to predict until I saw my own habits laid out like formulas. What time I left for work. Which route I took home. How long I lingered in the parking lot before coming inside. There was one entry that made my stomach flip. He hesitated outside the bedroom door again. 17 seconds. Same pattern as post-trigger behavior in November. Post-trigger behavior? Triggered by what? And then, in a different pen, underlined in shaky red. Do not let him see the hospital records. Delete copy from USB. Move originals from attic box to safe house. I sat there in the flickering yellow light, trying to put the pieces together. Hospital records. a man following me, Trina documenting me like a lab rat, and that line I couldn't get out of my head. He still hasn't remembered anything from 97. I tried to recall that year, anything, but it was a blur, a gray fog. I remembered the girl I dated briefly that fall, my psych professor with the handlebar mustache, a Halloween party that ended with me blacked out on a stranger's lawn. That's it. Nothing meaningful. Nothing big enough to explain this. I needed more. I called my mother. She didn't answer at first. Then she called me back 10 minutes later, sounding cautious, like she wasn't sure if it was really me. I asked her plainly, "Did anything happen to me in 1997 that I don't remember?" The line went quiet. Then she exhaled, long and slow, like she'd been waiting years for that question. "Dale," she said, "there was an accident. You hit your head. You were in the hospital for 2 weeks. They said it was a miracle you walked away from it. You don't remember any of that?" "No," I said. "Not a thing." She hesitated, then added, "Trina's uncle worked at that hospital. He was a technician. She used to visit him a lot that year. That's how you two met, remember?" But I didn't remember that. Because we met in 2013. At least, that's what Trina always told me. And now I was holding a notebook that tracked my every move. Written by the same woman who had apparently known me 16 years earlier than I thought. My wife had been lying about when we met. And maybe, just maybe, about who she really was all along. I didn't sleep. I sat in the motel room, staring at the ceiling while the hum of the mini fridge played a low mechanical lullaby I couldn't shut off. Every few minutes, I'd glance back at the notebook, at her handwriting, and I'd feel the cold ripple of something I couldn't name spread through my chest. I kept hearing my mother's voice, too. That calm, casual mention of Trina's uncle, and how they used to visit during the same year I supposedly had a traumatic head injury I had no memory of. The deeper I dug, the more it all felt like layers of wallpaper hiding right underneath. Around 5 a.m., I finally opened my laptop and went searching. Not for Trina, but for her maiden name. The one on our marriage certificate. The one she'd never liked talking about. She said it was too Polish to pronounce, and that she'd always hated the way it looked on paper. That's why I never questioned why she never used it for anything. No social media, no old email addresses, no public profiles. But when I searched that name, Trina Walinska, something finally cracked. There was no digital history at all until 2012. Nothing. No school records, no job history, no mentions in local newspapers or social platforms. Like she didn't exist before that year. Except, I found something else. An archived article from a Midwestern newspaper. March 1997. A tiny, blurry headline that read, "Teen girl found trespassing in restricted medical wing. Claims memory loss. Family missing." It had a black and white photo. She was younger, thinner, but it was unmistakably her. Same eyes, same mouth, same slant in her left eyebrow. Only the caption didn't say Trina. It said, "Tatiana Merrick, 17, in police custody after being found inside Lakewood Medical Center's north wing." I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour, heart jackhammering inside my ribs. I clicked into the article. It was short, vague, clearly scrubbed or buried. It mentioned how she was discovered wandering inside a wing of the hospital that had been closed off due to renovations. She had no ID, gave a name that didn't match any official records. When questioned, she claimed she had no memory of how she got there, only that she had to see someone who didn't know her yet. I felt the blood leave my hands. It was the same hospital I was taken to after the accident in 97, the one my mom had just told me about. And now I was looking at a 17-year-old version of my wife, or whoever she really was, being arrested inside that very building months before I was admitted. She didn't meet me in 2013. She had been there in 1997, before I even knew her name. I searched for more, but everything else was either sealed or scrubbed. There was no follow-up, no court records, no family claims. It was like she had appeared for that one incident and then disappeared until she re-emerged years later under a different name. I sat there, hollowed out, trying to piece together what I had missed for all these years. Trina, or Tatiana, or whatever her real name was, had inserted herself into my life with surgical precision. And the most disturbing part wasn't that she had lied to me, or even that she had been tracking me. It was that I still had no idea why. Was she watching me because of what happened in that hospital? Was she connected to my injury? Was she the cause of it? Or was I just one of many? I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out. Because as I stared at the screen, sick with fear and something else I hadn't felt in years, pure, skin-crawling suspicion, a text came through on my phone. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. You're not supposed to remember her. If you do, leave town now. She's not done with you yet. The message sat on my screen like a loaded gun. You're not supposed to remember her. If you do, leave town now. She's not done with you yet. I read it 6 times before I stood up, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. I paced the room for 20 straight minutes, wondering if I was in danger, if I was being watched, if someone was about to kick the door in. But no one came. No more texts. Just silence, as if the universe was waiting to see what I'd do next. I knew I couldn't go back to my house. Not yet. Not with her there. And I couldn't go to the police. What would I even say? My wife has a secret identity, surveillance logs, and was apparently watching me before I met her. They'd laugh me out the door. Maybe lock me up. Maybe that was the plan all along. But somewhere in that haze of paranoia and panic, something shifted. A memory. It didn't come like a flash. It wasn't cinematic. It was more like the peeling of paint, slow, dusty, unsettling. I was lying in the motel bed, staring at the ceiling, and suddenly, I remembered a hallway. Long sterile, white walls, and flickering overhead lights. I was in a wheelchair. A nurse pushed me past a glass window, and on the other side, someone stood watching. A girl. 17 maybe. Long black hair. Pale. Eyes locked on mine like she knew me. Like she was waiting. I remembered asking the nurse, "Who's that?" And the nurse just said, "No one." Except she wasn't no one. It was her. Trina. Or Tatiana. Or whoever she was. She had been watching me even then. But this time, the memory didn't come with dread. It came with calm. Because when I really thought about it, about the notebook, the pictures, the lies, none of it pointed to violence. It pointed to obsession, sure, but not destruction. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to stay close. Hidden. For years. Like she was terrified that if I found out the truth, I'd vanish. And maybe, just maybe she was right. Because I didn't go back to her. I didn't confront her or send an angry text or try to blow it all up. I left. I packed a bag and drove south. No destination. No plan. Just movement. Just the taste of freedom in my mouth for the first time in years. I deleted every contact from my phone. Got a prepaid number. Found a short-term rental near a lake in a town too small to have streetlights. I watched birds. I cooked my own food. I forgot what my calendar looked like. And something strange happened. I healed. Slowly. Quietly. I started to feel like a real person again. I stopped hearing her voice in my head. I stopped expecting a black SUV to pull up behind me every time I left the grocery store. I slept through the night. And after a few weeks, I realized something that shocked me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And I had it. I burned the photos one night. Not out of rage. Just closure. I watched the flames eat away at the faces of the man in the baseball cap, the shadowed glimpses of myself. I even tossed the napkin into the fire. The coordinates. That was over now. All of it. I don't know if she's still out there. Watching. Waiting. Hoping I'll forget again. But I won't. And the beautiful thing is, I don't have to do anything about it. She can keep her secrets. Her lies. Her other name. I've moved on. Somewhere along the line, this stopped being a story about betrayal. It became a story about survival. About reclaiming your own life after someone tried to write it for you. And I'm writing mine now. One peaceful page at a time.